There's one of those fantastic games that I could talk about and write about for so long that there would be a lot of material about it, but with this approach I would make the taste of Disco Elysium I'm talking about depreciated. Due to the fact that it's better to eat in portions, I decided not to focus on the whole game, but only on a scrap of it. As compensation for this approach, keep this recipe for red velvet cake and the story about the game I wrote back when it was fresh on the market and only fueled my appetite for it. What is, however, the most charming and attractive, the artwork, which is one of my favorite paintings of the modern age. It is the Cabinet of Thoughts from Disco Elysium. So let's take a look at the structure of this painting, which has a mix of Hieronymus Bosch symbolic surrealism styles, Hans Rudolf Geiger metatextual depth, and Salvador Dali critical paranoidism. All this will only constitute a discussion based only on my own impressions about art and its perception as a whole. For Cabinet was created for the game Disco Elysium out from the Zaum studio in 2019 and was painted by Anton Vill, who did not fail to represent the same surrealism in his other paintings as in the one we are discussing now. In addition, he did not fail to emphasize his left-wing politics dilemmas, just like the game's creators in their game, because in, for example, one of Villa paintings we can see Slavoj Zizek, a contemporary Marxist philosopher. The image in the game is to represent the thoughts that our characters acquires or basically creates, because thoughts are creates, aren't? Throughout the game, who is a detective after alcohol amnesia, which is the perfect excuse to rediscover the things in the world present to us as recipients. There are 52 thoughts in the whole picture that try to confuse your mind and at the same time create ultimately something without which a person cannot function, a worldview. The Cabinet of Thoughts is not only a splitting of the spectrum of thoughts and the construction of understanding matter with the corpses or body members spilling here and there, but also shows human guts, eyeballs, blurry face, cut off hands, or those chairs that practice anal sex, alluding to homosexual drives as a filter throughout which our imaginations pass their creation. Creation is based on sensory impressions, but it is the imagination which is driven by knowledge that filters these impressions so that a subconsciousness creation arise, i.e. an image of how we imagine something. These creations manifested themselves throughout history. Previously it was thought that animals were a direct work from someone and not, as now, a work development over time from someone or not, because today the lack of belief in supernatural beings is becoming more and more acceptable due to its universality. The same idea applies to the theory of the earth rotating around the sun, or even to the knowledge that it is ultimately the mind or the soul. Whatever calls it is located in the human brain, not in the heart. The background of the painting is dominated by eternal empty black, in which individual fractals of reality are revealed as thoughts. Strange structures emerge from them, such as tangled door in the form of a shell full of substances unknown to us, teaching us an equivalence that we simply will not open some doors in this world, and there is nothing wrong with that, because the measure of our success is not the quantity of open doors, but the versatility of the key with which we open it and valuable finds in the room that we have opened. At the same time, we must be aware that the structures in the picture are thoughts in themselves, representing a separate thread for something exceptionally deep, our own idea of reality. The actual art degree shows us like the biblical Cain and Abel or a context-free attempt at murder. For murder is an art here. This fight is art for our mind. Escapism to art is about escaping from problems, conflicts, and wars. In other words, aren't problems that contributing to the creation of art? Perhaps left-wing artists know something about it best because they focus on macro-scale socio-cultural issues. Cop of the Apocalypse is a thought expressing a mood of anxiety and a perfidious premonition that the end of the world is near. With red ears and glasses which, like a friar, pass through the nodules of your gaze at the world. Looking at the mouth of a half-cubic head, it is no longer a cataclysm, it is a dualism between embarrassment and satisfaction. In the depths of our soul, in the end, almost every one of us would like a cataclysm to come to humanity, and it would all end. The truth is, it won't end, not at the time we did like it too. Our punishment of consciousness individuals, regardless of whether we enter into theological threats or not, for civilization is the fact that we are doomed to independent change, attained by ourselves, and without it, there would never be a utopia or apocalypse to which so much subconsciously we want to pursue. Self-destruction in ourselves. But what is thinking about the end of the world, since we can barely remember our first home where we grew up? Is a lonesome long way home, full of a melting shirt with a hand holding a croquet bottle from which the congealed wine is poured. The shirt has a greyish wizard hat without stars, just like a baby's memories of the place where we would like to live for the last time. We all had it once, a huge premonition about the inviolability of a nation emerging from ashes, which is the pivot of development on a civilization scale, because who needs garbage dump ideologies that are supposed to accumulate another disorder? After all, it was all there. Supposedly from them all these nasty things come from. It is they who disturb the order of the utopian state of the eternal desire to keep the status quo in check. You have to come back to this state of affairs. That's what my friend told me. Such gibberish even spills from the ears of an orange sick man in a cap with a visor which is supposed to shield him from enlightenment. I think he has a broken nose and his eyes are ruined in an alcoholic context. The spilled mumbo-jumbo, however, makes a pink goo of itself, creating another little rebel who wants to defend the sovereignty of the state, which is, after all, constantly attacked by the enemies of the nation, right? As we can see, this perception of the world makes us blind. The little head no longer has eyes. They spread over the ground like whipped cream in the shape of shit. Another prelude to our thoughts. Taxes are bad after all. After all, deep down you wanted to dislodge this anarchist thought from yourself, but still you couldn't help it. Rebellion is advisable if someone puts a paw on my money. And it might be right in such a case, but like democracy or taxation, no better system has been invented so far. However, the thought in the picture is to symbolize avoiding optimization and changing the tax structure, and instead prefers to cut it down to the bottom, alarming that taxes are a threat to civilization. The state is robbing you of business. However, no one wants to realize that those who run a business sometimes rob their employees, depending on how large the workplace is. The white gentleman with grinning teeth has two capitalist hats, not one. He dresses in a suit with a tie, and I operate with my hands a pile of white tentacles that pass throughout him like money, only to build my own enormous financial finance. Who is stealing government now, and who is a surviving corporation, Mr. Businessman? The empire of cocaine on a huge cloud of erotic death by hanging. One sentence that sums up the whole thought based on the impression that all those dealing with drugs ended up the same. The head shredded like an apple pie, which with time turns into a balloon. Pants standing upside down may constitute a selective look at a given phenomenon, or open the gates to a new dimension of looking at individual cases on individual dead people. Artistry finally comes from overdosing. Art was implemented by people who like to intoxicate themselves, but it's not a question of moralizing or worth it. The image will instead emphasize it as a new genre of contemporary art, hardcore aesthetic. A complicated model posing like a Caesar, which holds its head by its shoulders, because only what is left in the place of the neck is a pure fiction of a gurgling mind that has wandered and always somewhere really far away. You can stamp your foot on the ground upside down, you could let blueberries or other, I don't know, strawberries turn into platelets. You finally hold the woman's head because it's yours. In fact, you are holding yourself with your tongue out, unable to perceive the real problems arising here and now. Choose wisely, trust the problems. They are not delusional. Minimum wage, professional career and pregnancy on the way, misogyny, having to find a partner before you are later in life, sexism, all this and much more is a structure of feminism trying to keep up with the changing world. In this world, still not every woman has emerged from extreme that prevailed in Europe not so long ago. Today, this patriarchy is weakening, and it is very good because it only generates the facts for each of the representatives of the chromosomes. The inexplicable feminist agenda stretches from New Zealand suffragists to the present day, and it is high time no patriarchal hand held any head and placed it around the neck of a well-groomed body. However, the body does not reveal what is deeply inside us. We are not talking then about melancholy, regret, or lamentation. We are talking then of an endless elegy. This is not a midsummer wreath anymore, because this type of headgear is a symbol of innocence, and meanwhile the tangle of plants emits an irretrievable impression that perhaps the failure lies within ourselves. Perhaps the system is not a mistake, but we ourselves cut the white yellowish square among flowers. Our dementia caused by unpleasant memories is a self-protection for the continuing of an anti-error circle, which at the same time wants to move forward, and yet cannot give up, lost, stuck in accumulation, accidental or consciousness handiwork, memory about a mistake, humiliation, another, death, divorce, guilt, or pure isolation. This is the only epitaph of our reflections on the reflections of the past. the white morning. Our thoughts love to intertwine in our office, and this is certainly why we so often solve problems in ourselves where their cause lies elsewhere. People find this advanced theory of race so convincing because they believe that skin color is influenced by behavior, and since someone of an alien color has done something repulsive, you should surely mistake correlations for causality. Haters of all nations hide ineffectively behind their sheets and form a circle of shared beliefs. Some people think that this circle is a threat, not realizing that they themselves are the circle in which they are, and maybe something is wrong with them because history has told them that they are some enlightened winners, or aggrieved by the fact that someone who had no rights before defied the orders of their great grandparents. This madness and boredom is something that accompanies all of us when we talk or question other people. The red eagle is the guardian of the law, and this is sacred. After all, no snake must stab us at the feather, otherwise we will end up with a broken jaw or scroll. Let's leave the change of love to state officials. The law does not work retroactively, so those who are in prison now for something will only stay longer, blah blah blah, who cares? The most important thing is to smash things throughout materialism, because we absorb reality by gaining and destroying all objects we encounter, finally forgetting that we ourselves are matter and we fall apart somewhere in the universe that we are trying to forge. Let's ask this barbed-knighted flamingo about it better. It is disembodied and invisible, but exciting because we finally started it in our imagination. If we can hear it well enough, we will hear it somewhere in the bushes. The bird is called Col du Mama de Croix. Remember this name for the future, because it will come in handy, although I don't know what for. Imagination is the greatest potential energy, triggering our ambitions about uncreated things. That snarling little dog on the hand of someone who has so many rings and signets of power must know it best, because in the end he has also wants to achieve something in life, but we do not know how to communicate directly with him. We lack tools for this dog, and maybe that's why there are so many levitating rats carved around this dog in hand, and I like it. Imagine an organism that is based only on magnesium instead of a carbon. After all, such a thing would be really attractive to everything that is unknown to us, and we want to create things based on a story that is somewhere drowned in the ocean, with airplanes and pilots fighting for everything. Separate ideas, separately believing that they are think together about one. This is ultimately a separate subculture, and then you see their garant children wearing these weird leather jackets that were designed for something else, but there's nothing wrong with that until history happens to repeat itself to our detriment. Ah, how many of these medals and others decorations for surviving the war stuck on the shirts of the former admirals. Then we might be surprised that instead of the brain, we give our whole head and face to an allegedly noble idea at the time when jackass and tormented post-war generations will vomit it all, just to sort out of the amount of broken buildings around. The really devastating thought that is that every time in peacetime you have to change reality, lest you fail wake up with your hand in the potty in times of war and watch the next generations will be ruined by pseudo-intellectuals who thanks to their populism and cleverness, got on the stool of someone influential. Of course, all this can be made shallow and first clean your room under the supervision of Mr. and Mrs. drawers and wardrobes for clothes. However, it is worth taking a breath and eating something delicious. Speaking of delicious things, let's talk about sex. I mentioned earlier that there are sexual chairs in the painting that cannot resist their own orientation, and very good, because there is no wrong with it. The ground to balance your need well and possibly agree with the other person if you have one. Sex can be disgusting at times, even for a picture that in fact presents you with different parts of your body in a rather deformed form, but in the end it is about not losing your ecstasy to suffering. Smile and feel the power of fantasy of what is not even known to you, and maybe you will rediscover yourself. Yes, I use the narrative all the time as if the picture is telling you what it wants to show you. Don't worry about that. However, if you are not entirely convinced, remember that the realm of consciousness is waiting for you. It wants to convince you that nothing is worth changing. It is not worth having beliefs to change something in this or that, better to adapt to the majority and stop there. There is what your teacher at school told you, waving a stick on the head of this blue kitten behind a scarf with bee colors. The black carpet curls up like a pancake, like your perception of your reality. After all, it is unwise to change the world, since everything is more or less normal in your yard. You try to convince yourself this way, even though you know that is the wrong approach. But let's look at this head now. It has teeth in this that had teeth in them that have teeth in them, and the eyeballs are peering out here and there on their cheeks. The nose is double. It is the head of a vagabond who has lost himself, a hobo in walking around the city all alone and who cannot find himself or his home. He is absorbed by the abyss of impression, focused only on now. Defining the eternal now only made him stop looking at his mirror as a symbol of the future or some precious object from the past. Finally, the fourth cabinet presents the vagabond as the one who is unable to see himself because all his hobo eyes are blurred by the present, unable to self-reflect. Allow yourself a break for a moment, says the image. Your sentence will take you subconsciously to where your consciousness no longer wants to. It is the apricot chewing gum scented one that has led you to a certain place on this planet. Other times it will smell like dumplings or tomato soup somewhere else or whatever. Still something woke you up. The angel wings dug into your gums soaked your teeth beat into the rubber like an asphalt pavement into the grass. It is an important lesson to remember what tastes the best, the least, and the best for us. Without it, we would not have so much contact with the world, no matter how much we would like to get away from it. People with insomnia and dysgraphia know something about it. Yaman's vu is also an interesting kind, the opposite of déjà vu, characterized by the fact that you have never seen anything but it seems to be extremely familiar in the final glow of all those faces that, like white plates, revolve around each other throughout our lives. After all, life is full of the realization of all encompassing reality. After all, the grotesque word still exudes in its infantility and human suffering. Finally, we see a muscular hand holding a hammer made of some kind of lime, and the figure to which the hand belongs is a pile of clothes, perhaps diapers, on which some strange monocles or glasses are attached to humanize this creation in our brain. Various people people who refer to a given idea can do things that are bloody, devastating society, and can also create something incredibly beautiful and useful. The achieve of the changing world is the result of unfortunately colliding ideas trying to start the synergy process in their internal synthesis and shapes the reality in a more or less friendly form. The only problem is to keep this form and then refine it and translate it into a place where this form is still completely apocalyptic. Perhaps this is what this whole already modern communism is about. I don't know, I'm not the author of this picture after all. The thoughts cabinet is a mixture of what we want to get from people, what we want to hear, and what we want to accept. Our worldviews are never fully consistent, because they have always mixed factology as knowledge with premises favorable to accept or deny something. The human mind is a gigantic journey from melancholy to hilaricism and vice versa, throughout selfishness and altruism, from mountains and to seas and earth to heaven, or whatever. If you want to be disco, you have to be Elysium. Good luck on this further path to optimizing the consciousness among other people with their own worldview / I believe that this mash will really turn into something virulent enough to be enough for all of us and for future generations on this planet. A planet that finally takes all these anti-disco blows to its chest and critically remains silent as much as it can. Therefore, I'm asking you to pay attention to her bumps, wounds, and scars that appears in her, because she will not tell you directly that she is suffering. She does not fall into pride and pride. She rather is the kind of parent who just don't want to complain about pain when she sees her child grow up to acquire a reasonable form. The child as the entire population on Earth, or at least a part of it. Today we have really good tools to communicate and reach a full consciousness. Therefore, do not deny, accept, and do not fail into populism. Be open to the extent possible and rationalize what seems to be the best in getting along and not stain in the next generations with some pseudo decisions of or gibberish or the eternal belief that you are endangered by other people. So it justifies attacking them, because it doesn't justify. In this way you lock yourself in a cage and you become a person who will be no less a threat than the enemy you have created for yourself. Think and work toward Elysium with the help of the thought cabinet. Good luck, and thanks for watching.